Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire after days of cross-border violence that left dozens dead. Clashes erupted in several areas along the country's vast shared border. In response, authorities have closed key border crossings at Chaman, Ghulam Khan and Torkham. The violence is the worst between the two neighbors since the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan in 2021.
Decades ago, Afghan mujahideen, like these Taliban fighters, relied on weapons and training from Pakistan. Since then, relations between the Taliban and Pakistan have soured. In recent days, they once again reached boiling point, with both sides claiming to have killed dozens of enemy soldiers. Here in the Afghan border town of Spin Boldak, civilians were caught in the crossfire. Dozens were killed.
Bullets and mortar shells fell on our houses. One fell on my cousin's house. It martyred his son and wife, and 3 of his children were injured.
Pakistan said its recent strikes on Afghanistan targeted the Pakistani branch of the Taliban. Since the Afghan Taliban took power in 2021, Islamabad has accused the group of sheltering the Pakistani Taliban.
After the Taliban came to the power in Afghanistan, the terrorist organizations, they have mobilized themselves in Afghanistan, even with the support of the Taliban, including TTP. This is the main issue between Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Over the past 4 years, the so-called TTP has carried out thousands of attacks, targeting Pakistan's police, paramilitary forces and the army, leaving more than 2,500 people dead. Islamabad has accused the Afghan Taliban of ignoring the presence of TTP training camps in Afghanistan and even of funding the group, allegations that are backed by UN findings but denied by the Afghan government.
If the Taliban continues like that, the situation will be more complicated, and it needs international communities interaction or a kind of interference.
Both Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban have sealed multiple border crossings that are vital for cross-border trade and the movement of people.
The gate has been closed for about 4 or 5 days now. On both sides, produce and the vehicles carrying it were damaged. This is our own vehicle, a 60-ton truck loaded with sugar. Imagine if it remains parked here for 5 days. The entire stock will melt away. We implore both countries to please sit down together and find a solution. This is a huge loss for us.
While some experts say the clashes are unlikely to spiral into a full-blown war, some civilians fear they spell a difficult time ahead.
Well, for more on this, let's speak now with Hameed Hakimi. He's an associate fellow at the Asia Pacific program at Chatham House. He's also a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's South Asia Center. Thanks for being with us. So, we have a ceasefire now between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Do you think it will hold?
Thank you for having me, Terry. In my view, they need a political solution. Ceasefire will be violated, unfortunately, because there's a lot of mistrust that's been built, as has been evident in the clashes of the last few days. Both sides are accusing each other of violating the terms and the expectations of the other side. And also, they don't want to look weak by claiming that they're not the side that's calling for ceasefire. So there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of bad, for lack of a better word, but bad blood now emerging between the two sides. They were formerly very close friends. So for some of us sitting abroad, this doesn't make sense. And this would not have been expected, let's say in August 2021, when the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan and the Pakistani security establishment and the civilian leaders at the time welcomed them.
So 2 former close friends, as you say. Why then, Hameed, has the relationship between them become so contentious?
This goes back to the period when the United States and NATO were intervening in Afghanistan. There was an internationally recognized Afghan government. And the Pakistani government, especially the army and its security services, had what was called a dichotomous foreign policy. On the one hand, they were recognizing the then Afghanistan government working ostensibly with the United States, but on the other hand, were tolerating and even supporting the insurgency by the Taliban. And they had in Pakistan this consideration that you have the good Taliban, that are the Afghan Taliban, and the bad Taliban, that are supposedly the Pakistani Taliban or Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. So a lot of what we see today is a culmination of all the dichotomy that Pakistan had. For the Taliban in Afghanistan, although they've become the government, they have social bonds, they have camaraderie, they have ideological alignment, and they have a lot of friendship with the Pakistani Taliban. And when the Afghan Taliban were fighting the insurgency against the former government and NATO, they were actually operating in large part in areas inside Pakistan from where the Pakistani Taliban hail. So those connections are very social and organic beyond just organizational. And now the Taliban in Afghanistan are being asked, the government of the Taliban, to crack down on these Pakistani Taliban that are responsible for attacks in Pakistan. And I feel that it's going to be very, very difficult for the Afghan Taliban to go against their comrades, the so-called Pakistani Taliban.
So would you say that the demands that Pakistan is making of the Afghan Taliban to stop the Pakistani Taliban from attacking security forces, would you say those demands are reasonable then or not?
Certainly reasonable, because Pakistan, sadly, in a turn of events, is far more a violent place today than Afghanistan. And here I mean violence in terms of conflict-related violence. And that might sound really strange to the viewers, but with the return of the Taliban in Afghanistan, there's all kinds of violence, for example, human rights violations, a lack of a good government and all of that. But the conflict-related violence has all but ceased, because the parties of the conflict have removed themselves from Afghanistan, and the only party that was there, the Taliban, are now in power. So all the violence that you see in Pakistan committed, as the Pakistani government believes, by the Pakistani Taliban, it's resulted already in 2025 in over 2,400 fatalities. Last year, Pakistan suffered 2,500 fatalities. And in large parts, this is attacking the Pakistani security services, the army posts, and army, being the bulwark of institution in Pakistan, prides itself by being powerful, by being in control. So part of the problem for both Pakistan and Afghanistan leaders is that the TTP is challenging the powerful Pakistani army, and the army needs to show that it's in control, that it can respond by going after them. And this is why we see for the first time since the creation of Pakistan that the Pakistani jets have bombed Kabul, the Afghan capital.
Right. Hameed, thank you very much for talking with us today, for your insights. That was Hameed Hakimi from Chatham House and the Atlantic Council.
Thank you.